Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on preparing for regulatory inspection. My name is Aneta Gel and I'm a Quality Operations and Training Manager at Pharma Limited. Today I would like to talk to you about inspection readiness, and I want to position the topic slightly differently today because it isn't the last minute activity. And it is not just about preparing a meeting room, polishing the slides, or coaching people to give the perfect answers. Inspection readiness is much more than that, because it is the visible evidence that your pharmaceutical quality system is working as intended in daily practice. If you have experienced an inspection, then you know that regulators are effectively testing four things when they inspect our sites. They test the product, the process, the data, and the people. I have designed this webinar for quality and regulatory professionals who already understand the baseline of GMP, so I won't be going into much detail on that. And the focus today is on what should we prepare, how should we behave during the inspection, and how do we respond in the way that builds confidence rather than create more questions. So let's start. Let's start at the beginning when we think about what regulators are really testing and inspecting. As I already mentioned, it will help to bring the inspection back to four simple areas, which is product, process, data, and people. For product, the main question is whether the site can consistently manufacture and release the product that is safe, effective, and compliant. For the process, the main question they will ask is whether the process is understood and controlled, and whether the pharmaceutical quality system in place is robust enough to support that control. When it comes to data, the question is whether the records are complete, contemporaneous, attributable, retrievable, and reliable. Your core Alcoa ++ principles. And for people, the question is whether the trained staff can explain the work they do accurately and provide evidence for that. And this is the reason why inspection readiness cannot be reduced to a set of rehearsed answers. A confident answer is only useful if the procedure, the executed record, the raw data, and the decision-making trail all support it. So a useful question to ask ourselves here would be, if an inspector selected one product and one batch with one deviation and one supplier today, could we explain the full evidence chain without contradictions? Will we have all the links clear and ready? That is our question. Before we go further, let's have a quick look at the inspection landscape, which can look sometimes complicated because each authority has its own procedures and terminology, but the underlying expectations, as we know, are very similar. For FDA inspections, we see the routine CGMPs inspections, the pre-approval inspections, four-course audits, and then you have the potential of FDA 483s, where you have the objectionable conditions documented. Of course, Form 483 is important, but it is not the final agency determination. In the EU and EMA environment, the focus sits with EU GMP framework, harmonized inspection procedures, and they focus on site master file quality, and then of course if serious cases identified, possible non-compliance statements. MHRA operates a risk-based model and may conduct a short notice or triggered inspection, and then have the deficiencies graded and escalated if the responses to those deficiencies are not acceptable. ICHQ does not inspect, but it provides us the quality system language that the inspectors expect us to have operational or in operations. And that is pharmaceutical quality system, quality risk management, CAPA or change management, and importantly, your management review. So the key message is that a strong site should not need a different quality story for each individual regulator, because the common denominator here is your evidence of control. Next, I would like to go through the main inspection types. So the type of inspection changes the pressure on the team. A routine inspection usually tests the general health of the site and its quality system. When you have a pre-approval inspection, this one is more focused, and it's focused on whether the site can manufacture as described in the application that they've submitted, and whether it is ready to supply the product that they have submitted application for. A triggered or for cause inspection feels different because the regulator may already have a concern that would create the extra pressure on people, as you can imagine, because that concern can come from complaints or recalls. It could be a whistleblower information. It could be that your site had a really bad inspection history or another signal. And in that situation, if you have a weak and incomplete evidence, that can cause the inspection scope to widen very quickly. Short notice inspections, like the for cause ones, they reduce the opportunity to stage the site, so they will show the site in the real operating state because you don't have any time to prepare. Remote and hybrid inspections create a different type of pressure because the quality of records, screen sharing, system access, audit trail, and digital exports become the focus of your inspection. So they are the critical part of the inspection. So before we start working on the readiness for the inspection, it's important to ask the question, why is the authority inspecting? Why are they coming to our site? And what evidence will they expect us to provide during that inspection? This slide gives us an example of a practical 6 to 12 week readiness plan for the announced type of inspection. So this is when they announce to you well in advance that they are coming to do a regular inspection at your site. And the purpose is not to create panic, but is to give structure to the preparation for your inspection. So in the 12 to 8 weeks, your priority should be governance. You should confirm who will lead the inspection, who are going to be the deputies, your subject matter experts if needed, and you want to check whether your site master file or site pack are current and ready for presentation. Then when you are in your week 8 to 4, you move to evidence. So what you do, you review your critical SOPs, your batch records, deviations, your CAPAs, supplier files, training records, and data integrity controls. And this is a time when you want to find the inconsistencies internally before they are found by the inspector. And then we have the weeks 4 to 2, where we want to focus on the physical readiness and the people readiness. So what you want to do then, we want to walk the facility as an inspector would. We want to test the request tracker if we have one, and we want to run mock interviews to see how the key people respond to questions that would be asked by an inspector. And then in the final 2 weeks, what you want to do, you want to rehearse the full process. So the mock inspection, executive alignment, response templates, are they in good order, and are our escalation pathways set up correctly? The key point is that our documentation package must match what's seen on the floor, on the production floor, in the systems, and what the people will present. Next point I want to talk about is documentation and data integrity, as they are at the center of your inspection credibility. A good inspection answer is not just a quick response. Good inspection answer is a quick response that is complete, controlled, and traceable. When an inspector makes a request, the team should be able to build an evidence package. And that package would start with the request itself, then the relevant SOPs or the specifications for that topic or for that request, your executed records, the raw data or audit trail if relevant, and any link deviations or CAPAs that are related to that topic or to that record. And then you want a final QA check before the package is provided. And the reason this is important and it matters is very simple, because the inspectors, they don't want a final answer. What they want a story, the procedure, the executed record, the raw data, and the quality decision. They want to see that they all reconcile. If these elements don't line up or they don't reconcile, their confidence will fall very quickly. And if you've experienced this, you know that once they start circling around a topic and the answers are inconsistent, they will not leave it. They will dig deeper and they will expose the hidden gaps that you or we try to hide vehemently. So it all must link together. So if you want to use summaries, they are useful, especially for complex topics, but you must have the links to your source evidence. The strongest model is the one where you have the log request, you have one owner, you have one quality review, and then you get one complete response, because that shows control. When it comes to inspection readiness, it is now both physical and digital readiness that we need to think about. Facility tours still matter enormously because they expose what the slides that we present can hide. Inspectors notice housekeeping, status labels, material flows, your equipment condition, line clearance, and any visible records. And of course, what they do, they kind of observe whether the area looks genuinely controlled. So do not underestimate the tours, as the inspectors do notice things. They are trained to do that. And the thread of their questions may start there with a seemingly unimportant comment or situation that was observed during the tour. For sterile operations, the scrutiny becomes even sharper because the team needs credible evidence to show contamination control, your airflow and environmental monitoring, your cleaning and disinfections. Okay, so Any aseptic risks that could affect the product will be scrutinized during the inspection. Remote and hybrid inspections, they add another dimension to it all, of course, because the inspection room may now include screen sharing, document portals, your controlled exports, audit trails, and system demonstrations. And if you have poor scan quality or you have confusing file names, missing metadata or unstable technology, that can make the site look less in control than it really is. Of course, not to mention Teams messages popping up on your sharing screens. The message I want to leave with you is that presenting a normal state beats the visible staging every single time. A tour should show the routine state of control, not a performance created for inspection day, because you're bound to slip up. Okay, so normal state, the state in control is the best way to do it. People do not realize that the general conduct during inspection is also very important, and how you present yourself will influence the overall outcome. The professional approach, even when challenged or shown that there are gaps in your process that you own, is a key to a successful outcome where the inspector can see that you are working with them and that there will be a constructive feedback and constructive work done after the inspection. Arguing and becoming defensive will only increase inspector wariness of your answers and their credibility. Of course, we must not forget inspection performance is a team behavior, not just a single QA responsibility. And the hosting model should be clear before the inspection day. So the inspection lead is the single point of coordination and should manage the flow of the inspection. The QA lead should be the one that reviews the evidence packages before they are delivered and presented to the inspector. You should have a back room where you have a backroom lead that will manage the retrieval and will track every request that comes out from the front room or the room where your inspector is sitting. Subject matter experts will answer questions from the facts, the records, and the knowledge of their role only. No assumptions, no guesswork. You have runners that will help move documents or the information between the front room or the back room. And then you can have executive sponsor that remains available for escalation or demonstrations of management accountability. For interviews, I like to use a very simple pattern, and that is that you listen carefully, you answer factually, you show the record where needed, and then you stop. We should not fill any silence with speculation. I'm sure you've heard it before, and it's a common technique of inspectors and auditors where they will use the silence for us, the auditees, to fill it with extra information, thinking we are being helpful. We should not do that. We should not answer outside of our role, and we should not guess what the answer or what they are expecting to hear in addition. It's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know, I will retrieve the record, or the responsible SME can confirm that point. That is not a weakness, it is a professional inspection behavior. I remember my first FDA inspection a few years back, and the moment when I answered the question given to me by the inspector, and then the inspector went silent. And I took a deep breath to try and explain a little bit more what I said, just to stop the awkward silence. And I remember it like yesterday, the look on my boss's face that just made me breathe out and not say a word. And that was the best lesson for me, that makes me smile every time I think of it, and every time I talk about preparation for inspection. You say what you need to say, you say your facts, and then you wait for the next question. You don't try to over explain. So what can we do? We can have mock inspections, which are valuable tools, but they are only good if they test the real pressure points. So they should not be a gentle review of procedures. What they should do, they should test whether the operating model works when people are under the time pressure. So what you want to do is check, can the back room retrieve the right records quickly? Can the QA identify an incomplete evidence package before it reaches the inspector? Okay, can the SME answer clearly without over-explaining or speculating? Can leadership make a timely decision when there is a potential product risk or data integrity risk? The metrics here are useful because they reveal control before inspection day. Request turnaround tells us whether retrieval works. An overdue kappa and the repeat deviations show whether problems are recurring. Your audit trail review, training accuracy, your supplier status, and mock findings closure all point to a system health. The important point is that these metrics should not be a cosmetic dashboard. They should feed management review and drive actions. And of course, you shouldn't find any surprises when you start to prepare for your inspection. After the inspection, we have the closeout meeting. And the closeout meeting is not the end to the inspection. It is the start of the response phase. The first 24 hours after closeout are often more important than the final hour of discussion. So first, we need to separate the observation from our technical interpretation. We should capture exactly what was said and avoid immediately rewriting the observation into a more comfortable version that is more suitable to us. Second, we triage the risk. Is there an immediate patient risk, product risk, sterility risk, data integrity risk, or is there a risk to a distributed product? If yes, interim controls need to be documented and escalated quickly. Thirdly, we build the response around the investigation, the root cause, your kappa, the milestones, owners, and effectiveness checks. Because a good response is concise, it's evidence-based, it's realistic, and it's clearly owned by the management. Regulators do not need long, generic promises. What they need is confidence that the site understands the issue, the observation, or the non-conformance that was raised. They have assessed the impact, and they have a credible plan to prevent recurrence with the timelines that are manageable. You don't want to promise inspectors short timelines because you think that is the right thing to do when you know you're not going to be able to do the tasks that you've said you were going to do in that timeline. So what are the common findings in inspection? Recent inspection examples still show that majority of findings are still your classic GMP issues. But of course, the regulators see them as a sign of weakness of your system, of your quality management system. The recurring themes are generally the weak investigations, ineffective CAPA, no CAPA effectiveness checks, data integrity lapses, quality unit oversight gaps, low or no contamination controls, and of course, weaknesses in supplier qualification. And they are rarely isolated paperwork problems, because they raise the questions about whether your pharmaceutical quality system is controlling your process properly. I've got a couple of examples here from the recent findings. One of them is a sterile manufacturing facility and the FDA warning letter. And the themes in the warning letters included the investigation scope wasn't good, aseptic practices, the airflow visualizations, and they had gaps in CAPA effectiveness. And of course, the lesson here is that contamination control strategy must connect to evidence and the product risk decisions. A second useful example I have is another warning letter which involved a trial injections, missing documentation, a weak audit trail, and a very limited quality unit oversight. And of course, the lesson here is that the data integrity doesn't just apply to laboratory issues. Data integrity is cross-functional pharmaceutical quality system issue. And then finally, what we have is supplier qualification, and it remains at the high inspection risk, because what the sites are doing, they are relying on supply certificates or the documentation without any risks. So if you want to do that, and the lesson here is, if you are using documentation from your supplier, you need to show that you risk assessed it, you justified it, you validated the parts that you needed to validate it, and you periodically requalify or reassess the status of your suppliers. So this slide brings the discussion that we had back to the practical tools. And what I have here is an example toolkit that you can adopt and start using. You can adopt all of it, you can adopt some of it. And the toolkit, if you have it, should not sit outside of your pharmaceutical quality system. It should be embedded, and it should feed management review and routine governance. So the first tool is your site master file and site fact pack. And these need to be current and representative of the actual operations, because regulators use them to understand and plan inspection. I myself have seen site master files that haven't been updated for years. They still included products that were no longer produced, and certificates they were no longer valid. The second tool is a readiness checklist. This should be used periodically and not only when you're expecting an inspection, because it should cover governance, the documentation, data integrity, facility readiness, and CAPAs, supplier control, and your hosting arrangements. If you have many client audits, if you are a CMO, this would benefit even there, because it would make sure that you are audit ready and every time. And the third part of the toolkit is to have a request and observation tracker. If you decide to use this, make sure that you test it and you use it before your inspection day, that you make sure that it works well You don't want to test it live when you've got an inspector sitting in your front room. Every request, if you are using a tracker, should have one log number, should have one owner, one QA review, and have a clear delivery status. You can see it needs to have an ownership. If you give it one owner, that one owner will own it. You don't want to give it to two people, because then no one knows who actually owns it and who should deliver. And the fourth tool here is kind of internal response template. And that is a good tool to use after the inspection that will help your team cover all the important parts to cover before you send the response to the regulator. So it will cover the risk assessment, the investigation scope, the CAPAs, the milestones, and any evidence attachments. By using these tools, what we can do, we can move from episodic preparation to lasting inspection resilience. So with that, I would like to close today's session, and I want to bring it back to the capability building, because inspection readiness is not only about surviving your next inspection. It's about building a stronger quality culture and more confident organization. At the Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence, we support teams who want to strengthen this capability in a structured and practical way through a selection of courses, depending on your specific needs. Depending on your current risk profile, you may be interested in GMP inspection readiness, hosting excellence, or data integrity and documentation mastery, or quality leadership for senior managers and QPs. As we know, the most successful teams do not wait for an inspection notice to start improving. They build inspection readiness in their normal quality rhythm, day-to-day work. Okay? And what they want to do is they are striving to doing the right thing when nobody is looking. So contact us if your organization would benefit from a site-specific workshop, or a mock inspection program, or a role-based learning pathway, or if your company needs support with addressing of a critical or major observation from the regulators. The contact details are on the last page, so please do get in touch. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this session has given you a practical way to think about inspection readiness and a clear set of actions that you can take back to your team. Thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of the day, and I hope to speak to you soon. Bye.